So why is this family idea so important to God? Why is Jesus so adamant that while biological family is important and one is called to love and care for them, that there could come a day when push comes to shove and the spiritual family, the covenant family of God, is the one that lasts forever and has to take priority and precedence? Part of the reason for this, I'll propose, and we see this right through the scriptures, from the Old Testament through the New Testament, is that God has this heart for unfamilied people. God, when he looks upon the earth and sees people who don't have family, his heart breaks for them because he wants them to be in the protective bounds of family. Listen to a couple of passages, just a few of the many where this theme comes through in Scripture. Deuteronomy 10, verse 18. God defends the cause of the fatherless and the widow and loves the foreigner residing among you. Give them food and clothing. So 3 types of people are mentioned here: the fatherless, the widow, and the foreigner, the alien, the one who isn't of your national ethnicity, isn't of your tribe or clan, but who's in your land. What's common to all 3 of those is these are people who don't have family, not in the sense that the ancient world provided it. If one had no father, if one is a widow, one is in a very precarious place without the protective bounds of extended family. If one is a foreigner traveling in a foreign land, well, that means one's biological family is in another country, somewhere else, and they are alone without family. And God's heart goes out to them. Psalms 82, verse 3, turns this into a command for God's people. It says, "Defend the weak and the fatherless. Uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed." God's heart has always been for those who have no family, for those without possessions and resources, for those who are exploited and oppressed. Now this carries right through, as I said, to the New Testament. Listen to James chapter 1, verse 27. The kind of religion, James says, that is pure and undefiled is this: to care for orphans and widows. Once again, those without parents, those without a spouse, those in the ancient world that would have meant without the protective system and framework of family. Now, the New Testament, as it's teaching about the importance of family and bringing the unfamilied into families, right? That's what covenant can do. It can take those people not familied and through covenant relationship create families for them. This is being taught in the New Testament in a context of the Roman Empire. Let me say a few words about just one area here of Roman life in Jesus' times and how this kind of teaching radically transformed how the church approached certain things compared to its culture. And one issue I'm going to bring up here is a part of what we could call Roman family planning. In the Roman world, planning one's size of family was important. For much of the Roman world, as many cultures, one could only sustain so many family members with provision and resource. And so one had to strategize as to the size and makeup of one's family. We know from ancient records that one of the ways that Romans kept management of their family sizes was through 2 means: abortion and infanticide. In the Roman period, infanticide was a very common way of keeping the number of children to a manageable size. More than that, typically what it meant was that while Roman sons, males, were valued, oftentimes Romans didn't want too many female children. Females were just largely devalued in that culture, and one of the ways of managing the number of female children one had was to expose, put to death in some way, female babies. Let me read to you from a letter that we've recovered from the ancient world. It just happens to be a letter written from a man to his wife as he's away in business in the town of Alexandria. He says this, "I'm still in Alexandria. I ask and beg you to take good care of our baby son. Now, in case you give birth to the new child while I'm gone," so apparently this woman already has a child, it's a son, she's caring for it, but she's pregnant now with another. He's giving her instructions on what to do with this baby that's going to be born sometime. "If you give birth to this new child while I'm gone, if it's a male, keep it. If it is a female, dispose of it." Infanticide was a common means of birth control or family planning in the ancient world. How did one dispose of a baby? Well, usually one of just a few ways. We have record that oftentimes a little baby that was unwanted, again, usually a female, perhaps a male with some birth defects, that baby could be drowned. That was a fairly common way to get rid of an unwanted child. In fact, it wasn't too long ago that some archaeologists were excavating a site on the Mediterranean seacoast in a town, and they discovered under the town a sewer system. And as they were digging through the sewer system, excavating it, they found that the sewer had got clogged at one point. And as they began to sort through the silt and what was clogging the sewer system, they found it was primarily the bones of infants. And by their count, over 100 bones of 100 infants had clogged the sewer system up. A brutal testimony to the fact that drowning in the public sewer system was one way of getting rid of an unwanted child. Another way of infanticide, putting infants to death who you just didn't want to care for, was to just take them somewhere and leave them outside. Take them out to the hillside or a forest and just leave them there and go back, assuming either the elements or the animals will take care of it. This is the world into which Jesus and the early Christian church were born. Now, what was the Christian response to infanticide as a birth control practice in the ancient world? Well, we have record of what their response was. It was three things. First, Christians refused to practice infanticide. It was a countercultural move, but they just wouldn't do it. We're not going to kill children. They just drew the line there, even though the rest of the culture around them was a very common practice. Secondly, they called for Rome to stop doing it. We have indications that Christians were encouraging their Roman neighbors not to do that. Thirdly, and most importantly, they didn't just talk about not doing it. We have record that some Christians would actually go out and try to find these babies that have been left out in the elements and would find them and take them and bring them back to their own homes, adopt them, raise them as their own. In other words, the early Christians practiced what we could call missional adoption, literally bringing unwanted babies into their home in order to preserve their life, raise them in a kingdom family, and bring them into relationship with Jesus. One beautiful example of how the early church followed the teachings of Jesus when it came to those who were unwanted, oppressed, unfamilied. They brought them in and made them part of their family.